What is good, everybody? It is your boy Champagne Chico, and we're here with a way too early mock draft. I want to get this started. I'm excited. I'm excited for the next draft and to be able to watch college football more in depth and watch the film and everything and really get to know these players and where they need to go in terms of teams. But you can't see any of that progress if you don't go down there and like and subscribe for me. I really like doing these mock drafts. I've done a couple of them because of draft week that we just had. And I love talking about football. I love seeing the prospects and seeing how they develop over their career. They have the Cardinals going 1 and 2 because they traded for the Houston pick next year or this coming year now. That'll be pretty interesting, but that serves the question of, do they start to replace Kyler Murray? Do they get Caleb Williams out of USC and say Kyler Murray's not doing the job? We need to get a tall improviser is really the word for it. He can get out the pocket, he can throw it out the pocket, and he can really throw a dart and throw it downfield too. Caleb Williams is your ideal quarterback of the future. It's just how much do you believe in Caleb Williams in order to replace Kyler Murray with him? And what do you do with Kyler Murray? You're at a position here that you just can't really pass up on it. But in the matter that they do end up sticking with Kyler, we could look at some trades. I mean, I just can't imagine. Caleb Williams being passed on by the Cardinals. And in his Heisman season, he had 4,500 yards, 42 TDs, and only 5 interceptions. I mean, it's tied 16th, so it wasn't the best in college football. He had an 87.6 QBR, which was 5th in college football. And he's playing under the same coach that Kyler Murray was playing under in Lincoln Riley, and he's playing really well. His longest throw was 75 yards. The only time I've seen Kyler even really come close to that is the DeAndre Hopkins catch that they had in the end zone, and that was basically just D-Hop going up for it. He just launched it. He didn't even really try to throw it with accuracy. DeAndre Hopkins just went up and got it. I mean, there are some great prospects other than that. I just don't think the Cardinals let the value of the number 1 pick get, I guess, wasted, if that's the word for it, by not trading it with somebody that would need a quarterback. Anthony Richardson is already on the Colts, so hopefully that works out for them. I mean, the Packers could be a situation too. The Cowboys don't need it. The Chargers don't need it. The Broncos have Russ. Falcons may be actually the ideal situation. 13-1-2, 45. The only issue with this, see, they have Desmond Ridder as starting quarterback. That's just not something that you want. That's definitely not something that you want. You could trade some weapons. I don't know who exactly you would trade to this team. I would think the trade would kind of go like this, but with a player of the Falcons. I don't know if they're giving up Kyle Pitts. Drake London, I highly doubt it. He is the future of the Falcons receiving core. I can't imagine that, but I really do think that the Falcons could be somebody that pushes for that number 1 spot. Desmond Ridder is not your QB of the future. I can 100% guarantee that right now. Desmond Ridder is not that man. And much respect to him, he's not a starting quarterback. He's not a starting quarterback. He wasn't drafted to be a starting quarterback. It's not ideal. I mean, the Raiders, the Packers, the Commanders, all teams that could really make a move for it, but I feel like the Falcons would be aggressive enough with the weapons that they have in Drake London, now Bijan. They have a solid defense. This could probably happen. I think this is just what I'm going to have to do in terms of the first overall pick. I can't imagine the Cardinals moving on from Kyler Murray right after they sign him to an extension, unless he has a catastrophic season and just absolutely sucks, then I can understand. But I have Caleb Williams going to the Falcons. I just can't let the Arizona Cardinals move on from Kyler Murray without seeing any of this season. Now, if we get to the halfway point of the season and the Cardinals are still up there in terms of picks and Kyler has not done anything or gets injured again, then I understand. But you just signed him to an extension. I I doubt that you're going to be doing that. But they are going to be giving him a weapon, or their possible starting QB of the future, Marvin Harrison Jr. At Ohio State. He was insane. When I watched Ohio State games, he could put his toes in. He didn't even just try to get 1 feet in at times. He would still get 2 feet in. He would toe tap almost every time. In the bowl game against Georgia, he was going crazy until they hit him with a dirty hit, and then he was out for the rest of the game. Marvin Harrison Jr. is an incredible wide receiver. Last season, he had 1,200 yards and 14 TDs, and he was a freshman at Ohio State. I mean, of course, he had C.J. Stroud just dealing it to him, but that's just not, it's not normal. It's not a normal thing. I think Marvin Harrison is going to have an insane season this year. They're really going to push the ball to him. He's just he can get anything. He can run routes. He's fast. That's the wide receiver that you want on the future of your team. And not only that, he's the son of Marvin Harrison, one of the best wide receivers of all time in the NFL. So Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Cardinals to play with Kyler Murray if they don't end up moving on from him. And here are the Bucks. And there's not much to really say about it. Drake Maye really showed up last season in terms of for North Carolina. He had a lot of big games. He kind of fell apart in the Pitt game. The Bucks just desperately need a QB, and this isn't a very deep one, to be honest with you, as of right now. Hopefully it picks up. I mean, I can imagine Spencer Rattler's going to pick it up because he had a great end to the season at South Carolina. Tyler Van Dyke is in the transfer portal, if I'm not mistaken. Deion Sanders' son. I mean, it's kind of like unpredictable in terms of how he's actually going to do in the NFL because he's running under his dad's scheme. But Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington is also a good pick. Bo Nix has been solid at Oregon for a while. But I think Drake Maye is going to be going to the Bucs regardless. And with Drake Maye, if he doesn't end up developing much more this season with the Tar Heels, you still get a really good project quarterback in terms of his size. He has elite ball placement. He can scan the field and knows where to put the ball at. He's able to get the ball out quickly with accuracy too, and that's something that you don't see a lot. A lot of QBs, especially in this past draft, had an issue in terms of pressure, like C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, just quarterbacks that, and Will Levis, who ended up falling out of the first round and going to the Titans still, even after a lot of people had him going to the Titans in the first round. He just maintains a really good rhythm in the pocket, and he could take up Caleb Williams in being the QB1 of the draft at some point in the season, and we're going to have to see throughout these mock drafts throughout the weeks. But the Bucs could be getting a really good quarterback with this and Drake Maye. 6'4", just everything you really want. Everything you want out of a quarterback, and the Bucs are going to be in desperate need of one this coming season because Baker Mayfield is not going to be that man, and I'm sure they're just taking this as a rebuild year to be at the top of the draft. But now the Colts are here, and they have had an offensive line issue for a while, but they also do not have a good tight end. They have Mo Alley Cox, who is solid, but you don't want Mo Alley Cox as the future of your franchise. I know that this is kind of just going with the rankings, and that's going to change very soon because we're going to start drafting for need. But Joe Alt has been an incredible tackle at Notre Dame, and the Colts only really have Quentin Nelson at the moment. They were able to get Blake Freeland out of BYU, who is a great tackle, don't get me wrong, but you need to, and you're still kind of scarce in terms of your run blocking and your pass blocking. The past QBs like Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers were getting hit. Jonathan Taylor really had to get out of there as fast as possible. I think Joe Alt can really add to that offensive line and just help him out a bunch. And he's going to be going to the Colts. He has the history. His father was a former NFL Pro Bowl tackle, and John Alt. He is a massive tackle. He is 6'8.5" right now. And that's really exactly what you want out of an offensive lineman. And I think they invest into tackle at this point. It didn't scare the teams in this draft with Paris Johnson getting drafted at 6. to the Cardinals. But Joe Alt is going to be going to the Colts. Now, the Commanders are here. They don't necessarily need Brock Bowers. I would imagine they try to go defense because they just declined a player option for Chase Young. And Jared Verse is a very good player out of Florida State. In 2021, he finished the season with 52 tackles, 9.5 sacks, and 11.5 tackles for loss, which is not bad. He needs to work on his technique. He needs to work on different types of things in order for him to be this top 5 pick that he should be in the draft. But he has a lot of potential. He has the explosiveness. He can really get off the line quicker than most in the NFL. I think Jared Verse is going to be what the Commanders go with, to be honest with you, just because if you're declining Chase Young's player option, you obviously see something in terms of the risk of his injury and his ACL tear that he had. I just think you still try to add to that defense. It's kind of the identity of this team right now. Jared Verse going to the Commanders, and I think the Packers are really happy about that because now Brock Bowers has fallen to them, but a lot of other picks have too. You have Emeka Egbuka, who is also a really good wide receiver out of Ohio State. You could have 2 Ohio State wide receivers going even in the top 5. To be honest with you, the Colts could go with wide receiver. The Commanders could go with wide receiver. I highly doubt the Bucs are going to do that. They don't want to piss off Mike Evans and Chris Godwin right now because Mike Evans probably already wants to leave with no QB on the team. And the Packers could break the habit. They could break the habit of not drafting a wide receiver in the first round. It's possible. It's definitely possible. Brock Bowers, as much as he's a great tight end, how long are you going to deal with Christian Watson being your wide receiver 1 on the team? And you already got Luke Musgrave in this draft, and also even Tucker Kraft in this draft. You're not trying to get a tight end in terms of a top pick. You're not trying to get a top 6 pick with a tight end from Georgia, which would be great for them. But you have Luke Musgrave. I'm sure that he's going to do fine, but wide receiver, it's desperate. It's a desperate need. And yes, you got Jaden Reed in this draft who could be great, but that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for a star wide receiver to help your quarterback develop, and Jordan Love is going to need all the help that he can get. You have the linemen right now. I think you take the risk of wide receiver with Emeka Egbuka. He is a fantastic wide receiver right now. Another sophomore who still played very well behind Marvin Harrison, who seems to be the clear wide receiver 1 on the Ohio State offense. He had 1,100 yards and 10 TDs on the season. He also had 100 yards and 1 TD against Georgia in the bowl game. J.C. Latham is also a possibility just because he is the right tackle. You need a right tackle because David Bakhtiari is basically just alone on that offensive line with Jenkins at left guard. You have a solid center. Right guard, still kind of a position of need, but it's not as desperate as tackle because the edge rushers can really just get around the side. It's a pick your poison type of situation, but in this one, we're just going to go with what the Packers usually would probably go with, and that's not drafting a wide receiver in the first round. J.C. Latham out of Alabama, a very, very good tackle, 6'6", has the length, has the strength. And as I said, throughout the season, I'm going to be learning more and more about these prospects and personally watching these games so I can really get a hold on everything about them. But J.C. Latham seems to be a great protector in general, a pass protector at that, because that's usually what the Alabama offense runs. I like that to the Packers. They really need to help out David Bakhtiari and Jordan Love. Jordan Love, if you're going to start him off getting hit as much as he probably will this season, he's not going to have a very long career, and I'm sure the Packers don't want that to happen. They want the same situation as Aaron Rodgers, that he sat on the bench for a couple years and still ended up playing a full career, but now he's on the Jets as Brett Favre was before. But now the Raiders are here, and QB again is a need for the Raiders, but they still have Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, depending on what they decide to do in terms of Jimmy Garoppolo and how well Jimmy Garoppolo plays, he could even still be good for next year. The only situation that I could see happening that they take a QB is if they move up And in this situation, the Falcons took that over and got the first overall pick to get their QB of the future, since Desmond Ridder is not the man that you want in that position. You traded away Darren Waller because of contract situations, because of management situations. He's on the Giants now. You did get Michael Maher already, so I'm imagining you're not going with Brock Bowers either. It's just not, it's not the right thing to do in terms of just using your pick for value. You could get Amike, like I've already talked about him before. Tackle, also your offensive line needs help. Cornerback, I mean, you can't really go wrong here if you're the Raiders. You really can't. Cornerback's still a need. You still didn't get it in the draft as much as you should have. A 4th round pick on a cornerback is not going to do the trick for y'all. It is not going to do the trick for Las Vegas Raiders. Kool-Aid McKinstry, one of the coolest names, no pun intended, in the draft. The Raiders could take Foshanu at the 7th overall pick. He has the size. He has the skill set that coaches cannot teach. He has everything you really need, but he's more, what he needs to work on is being more of a striker whenever he has his hands out blocking instead of catching them and just holding them there. As much as he is great at Penn State at offensive tackle, that's not really going to work out in the league. A lot of edge rushers are about the same size as him. He has great weight distribution at that, but there's a lot of edge rushers that will take advantage of that being his issue. So as long as he starts to work on being a little more aggressive in terms of blocking and not just letting them come to him, then he'll be great in the league. But I think the Raiders are going to take their chance on a tackle. I don't think they'll go cornerback. They need offensive line, either for Jimmy Garoppolo or just in general for the future of their team. I could see the Raiders even being the top pick in the draft. I really don't think that they're going to be good. I really don't. But they're at the 7th pick right now in this way too early mock draft, so we'll have them taking a tackle, and the Titans are now here. And a team that the defense is getting a little older. You still don't really have a crazy wide receiver core. So there's a lot of different choices that you can go with, but they don't have a tight end. They don't have a tight end. The tight end that they have did good. He did good when he picked up the starting role this past season. But I just can't imagine them passing up on Brock Bowers here. I have to see Brock Bowers going to the Titans at this point. As much as Amike is here and they need a wide receiver in some way, because Treylon Burks is still really the only one that you can go to with confidence. Chris Moore is great. Nick Westbrook is great. I think they deal with that for another season. I think they take Brock Bowers. Yeah, they have Roger McCreary. They have Sean Murphy-Bunting. They have Caleb Farley. I can't imagine them going with another cornerback this year. They're going to be taking Brock Bowers, who not only can be a blocker on your line for possibly Derrick Henry if they end up keeping him on the team, but he can go get it. He can be a vertical threat. He can run the routes. He can be the deep threat. I think he'll be solid for the Tennessee Titans if they prioritize tight end. They could go cornerback or wide receiver. But right now, I can imagine that they're probably going to want to replace their tight end right now that they have. And the Rams are now on the clock, a team that is basically rebuilding. This is their first-round pick in, I think, about 3 years now, 2 years. They haven't had a first-round pick for a while after the Matthew Stafford trade. And this is a position that really the only way they go is cornerback. Kool-Aid McKinstry is here. Can't really imagine him going anywhere else but the Rams right now because their cornerback room is so slim at this point. They were able to get Trevius Hodgins-Tomlinson, who I think is going to be great for them, but that's only one out of the possible 3 that you're going to put on the field. Kool-Aid McKinstry could fill into the Rams' defensive scheme pretty well. He is more of a zone coverage type of cornerback, but he can also defend the run. He can also tackle, and that's really what you want after losing Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins. Trading Jalen Ramsey for a 3rd-round pick, and Kool-Aid McKinstry can fill in that role once again and possibly even be a star in the league if they've used him correctly. I think he can be great. His tackling is pretty good as well. Kool-Aid McKinstry going to Los Angeles Rams, and now the Bears with 2 picks back-to-back because of the trade that they had with Carolina. An absolute steal of a trade. That front office did their work this offseason. And now they have DJ Moore. They do have DJ Moore, but who else do you have? You have Darnell Mooney, and Kalen King could be a possibility for the Bears. It just depends how he does this season, really. If I was to draft right now for the Bears, I'd probably take a Mecca and kind of get rid of Chase Claypool or put him on the back burner, really. You have Darnell Mooney, you have DJ Moore, you have Chase Claypool. If they end up performing the way that they should perform this season, I don't see them seeing wide receiver as a need. And if they don't see wide receiver as a need, they need to go with the next best position, which possibly will be Dallas Turner. But Kalen King will probably be the other pick that they will be going with. He's a great coverage cornerback. He's not the best at tackling. I think he needs to develop a little more this season with Penn State, and he possibly could do that. Not thinking of linebacker for them. They just signed TJ Edwards and Tremont Edmonds this offseason. The first man I have the Bears going with off the board is Dallas Turner, though, even though I think that Kalen King is going to be the next pick for them. Dallas Turner, 6'4", 250, has an unofficial 4.45 time in the 40. Can be a pass rusher, can be a run stopper. Coverage is okay, but I don't think you're going to be using him for that after getting TJ Edwards and Tremont Edmonds on your defensive side. Dallas Turner is really going to help the edge and the defensive tackles do their thing, but I think he can be the future for them. Dallas Turner going to the Chicago Bears, a really good edge rusher out of Alabama. Hopefully he gets better over the year, but Kalen King is going to be the next one. I've talked about him a good amount right now. Not the best tackler in the world, but he can be in zone coverage. He can be in man. I think he can get better over the season with Penn State, get better at tackling. Has a 5'11" size with, I think he's about 188, if I'm not mistaken. I think they go edge and cornerback here. As Amike is here, you could pair him up with a former Ohio State quarterback in Justin Fields, but I just can't imagine anything else. Kalen King going to the Bears. I'm sure that his ADP will go up throughout the year. And here are the Patriots, who could just take a for sure chance on a wide receiver right here. They were able to get Christian Gonzalez as a steal in this draft. And you don't necessarily need to reach on any of these picks. Linebacker is not a desperate position of need. Defensive interior, also not. Since you were able to get Christian Gonzalez as a steal in this draft, you don't need Cooper DeJean. You don't have bad edge rushers in Wise Jr. and Lawrence Guy and Matthew Judon if he's on the edge. I think they go with the safe wide receiver here. I think they do. I think Amike is going to be great. They need a wide receiver for the future. They keep trying to find it with Jacoby Myers now on the Raiders and them signing Juju Smith-Schuster. They have Kendrick Bourne. I think they need it. They definitely do need wide receiver. Out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka. Wow. Amike. Keep fumbling that last name. But now the Cardinals are here at the 13th pick because they traded their first-round pick to the Falcons for probably a star, a bunch of first-round picks. And now is where you are starting to look at the positions that you really do need. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., linebacker, a defensive interior player, somebody. You didn't take Jalen Carter in the draft, even though he was there. Cornerback, edge. You were probably hoping that Amika was going to be on the board. Maybe that's possibly a Cardinals and Bears trade so that they leapfrog over the Patriots because everybody knows that the Patriots need a wide receiver. And I think with the Cardinals pick, they're going to be taking defensive interior. They didn't take Jalen Carter in this draft, possibly because of his history in terms of legal troubles. I don't think that's going to be much of an issue in the league. Now you let him go to the Eagles, who's going to have an insane defense. It's basically just the Georgia Bulldogs at this point. But Jarzane Newton is a great run stopper. He's able to combine his strength and footwork in order to get through the gap. He has some smooth movement skills. The only issue with Newton right now is that he really just has to work on his technique. It's a lot of these players, a lot of these defensive players specifically in this draft. Over this year, I'm sure they're going to be able to work on their technique and get through it and be able to become a top prospect. But right now, Jarzane Newton, defensive tackle, really a run stopper, but could be a great pass rusher too. Going to that Arizona Cardinals, they have now added a player on offense and defense that could really make a big difference for them. Now the Giants, at the 14th pick, their own 14th pick, surprisingly. I don't think it's going to be this high. And the Giants are really in need of a right inside linebacker. And Jeremiah Trotter Jr. can really be that. He is a great coverage linebacker. Everything else is kind of iffy, but it's not what the Giants need. They have Kayvon Thibodeau at the wide outside linebacker. I think they go Jeremiah Trotter Jr. from Clemson. He, like I said, great coverage linebacker at 6 foot, 230 pounds. Not a bad size if he's going to be in coverage. Has an unofficial 4.6 40. Not bad for a middle linebacker, basically. Jeremiah Trotter going to the New York Giants and the Broncos now. Cooper DeJean is really the type of cornerback like Kool-Aid McKinstry up here that could really help you on run support. He's good in coverage, but he's more of a hybrid in terms of what he can do for you. The Broncos really only have Pat Surtain right now, and all the other cornerbacks are solid, but it's not what you want for the future. They're all getting into the 30s. Not really what you want, but you also have Laiatu Latu, who really is best suited in the outside linebacker position in a 3-4. Probably going to be playing as a rotational pass rusher in the UCLA defense this year. It's just, it really depends on how you do in terms of free agency before this. You could get some solid cornerbacks in that off season. I mean, you do have JT as well. JT is basically just a straight pass rusher at that point. He's good at the other things. He's not that great at run support, but he'll definitely get in there on the pass rushing or bring some pressure on the pass rushing. They were able to sign Zach Allen from the Cardinals this off season, but they still don't have an edge on the other side of that. They weren't able to get somebody in the draft for that. I think this is their chance to do so. Latu possibly being either that outside linebacker in a 3-4, or he could just be the edge in 3-4, and they kind of just switch around if need be. But here are the Seahawks, who took a cornerback. If you saw my reaction to that, I was not expecting them to take Devin Witherspoon in the draft whatsoever. I mean, it's a good pick. I don't hate it. It's just, you probably could have gotten Jalen Carter, who's going to be probably a generational defensive tackle, and you just let him go to the Eagles. So now you're in a position that edge could be a situation like JT, Cooper DeJean. I don't know. Maybe he's more of a slot cornerback. Yeah, I think this is also another edge position in the draft. JT, the Seahawks run a 3-4. They already have the cornerbacks. They drafted Devin Witherspoon. They have Tariq Woolen. They have Kobe Bryant. I don't imagine they're going to be going with another cornerback next year. JT is really the best case scenario for them. A pass rusher, an edge just in general, just because they need one. They were able to get Jermon Jones this offseason. But again, it's just like the Broncos. I don't think that's your solution right now. And in this next draft, if you're not able to make the playoffs, which possibly at this position, that means that they didn't make the playoffs, then they're going to have some defensive issues to handle, just because that seems to be where they struggle. Now that they have Jackson Smith and Jigba on the offense, they still have Kenneth Walker. I don't know why they drafted so many running backs behind Kenneth Walker. You're basically taking away his star value, trying to put all these young running backs behind him as well. But you have a great wide receiver room. Geno Smith can hold it down for right now. I don't think you take a chance on any of these quarterbacks in this draft. Bo Nix, Michael Penix. Right now, I'm not convinced on any of these guys. They'll probably maybe go with Spencer Rattler later, maybe even in round 2, because they don't have a pick in the rest of round 1. But I do think they go with edge here. Going with JT out of Ohio State, pass rusher, can really fill in that Seahawks defense. Now the Steelers, who got 2 cornerbacks in this draft this year, definitely not going with Cooper DeJean. And this could be another draft that the Steelers go with a tackle. They got Broderick Jones in this draft this year. The edges look good, but I don't think it's good enough to not try to replace the right tackle position that is weak at the moment. You have a pass blocker in Kingsley. Could develop even more over the year with BYU. Hopefully not too much that you get out of reach for him, but a tackle that you can get and really just plug and start for your offensive line. You do need edges. I mean, Cameron Hayward is only getting older, but I don't think that you go with edges right now. You need to get that offensive line set for the future, and getting Kingsley right now would do just that as a pass blocker. A decent run blocker, but a priority pass blocker out of BYU. And now the Vikings could take a chance on a QB. They didn't take a chance this year. I tried to predict that they were going to be able to trade up and try to get a QB, but Anthony Richardson didn't even fall out the top 4, and I had them trading for 5 in terms of draft position. So that was not going to be a thing. Kirk Cousins still is only getting older. And at this point, you really do need to worry about the future in terms of your offense. You have Jordan Addison. You drafted him in the first round over probably getting Will Levis. You have Justin Jefferson, who is debatably the number 1 wide receiver in the league. You have TJ Hawkinson. You can't just waste those years of having those type of talent on your offensive side without having either a QB that would develop or a QB that can actually take them to where they need to go. Michael Penix is a bit of a risk. He did have 8 picks last season. Needs to work on that out of Washington. He can throw the long ball, though. And that's a lot of the receivers that you have right now is going to be throwing it long. Medium, he can throw too. He can't really rush or scramble that much, but he does have a 4.64 unofficial 40 time. You maybe take a chance on him. If you're at the 18th pick, I don't imagine you really go for any of these right here. Safety, maybe. Cameron Kinchins. I just don't see you guys waiting another year. I just don't see you guys waiting another year to not get QB. Kirk Cousins is not getting any better. So Michael Penix possibly staying behind Kirk Cousins for a year and learning how to not throw picks, but I don't think Kirk Cousins is the best teacher for that. The Houston Texans, though, and I think the Texans are going to solve an issue that they have right now, and that is the wide receiver core. You did get Xavier Hutchinson, who I think was a steal at 205, but you don't need any of these positions. Safety, you have Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward. Edge, Will Anderson and Jerry Hughes. Cornerback, Derek Stingley. The rest of the cornerback room there, but I really do think that they go with another wide receiver. This is more of a deep threat. Xavier Worthy has a 4.29 40 time, I think it was. Yeah, a 4.29 40 time, unofficial, but 4.29, definitely a deep threat. He's going to go downfield and get that ball if you just toss it to him, and CJ Stroud loves doing that, and most Ohio State quarterbacks love doing that. And Xavier Worthy is the man I have going to the Texans, out of Texas too, so he does not have to go much further than that. But the Saints at the 20th pick, and as much as the Saints need cornerback, I don't think this is the position that they go with it. They have Marshawn Lattimore. They have Bradley Roby. Cameron Jordan's only getting older, though. And Mason Smith could really fill in that position. Not only fill it in, but kind of learn under Cameron Jordan. He only has a 4.8 40 time. He is 6'5", 300 pounds. He's more of a pass rusher. Really, like I said, just needs some refinement. Mason Smith out of LSU, I think, is the man that the Saints would eventually take out of LSU. Not going much further since they are in New Orleans. But now the Dolphins are on the board, who took Cam Smith with their second-round pick, to a surprise to most people. Even me as a Dolphins fan, I was expecting us to take Darnell Washington, if I'm being quite honest with you. Cameron Kitchens sounds enticing. We have Javon Holland. We're still kind of scarce on the other safety. I know that we got Deshaun Elliott this offseason. Halfback, I'm not sure. We took Akin in the 3rd round this year. I don't think we're going to need a running back. Cooper DeJean is very enticing, but we have Jalen Ramsey. So we have Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey, and now Cam Smith. Cam Smith is going to be the outside cornerback. Jalen Ramsey is going to be slot. Xavier Howard is really just going to be wherever he needs to be, and he's going to do semi-well. This past season, he didn't do that great, but hopefully he picks it up this season. As much as I want them to take Leonard Taylor to fill out that defensive line, since we do need a defensive or a nose tackle at that, Cooper Beebe, a fantastic pass blocker, a great run blocker as well, could possibly replace Liam Eichenberg. It's hard to pass up on that whenever he is already here at the guard position. It's really in between Leonard Taylor and Cooper Beebe. I mean, they could even possibly go tackle later on. Yeah, Zion Nelson out of Miami could possibly be one. I think that they're going to be going with guard. If Cooper Beebe does as well as he did last season at Kansas State, I can't imagine that the Dolphins will let him fall too much further. Going to be replacing Liam Eichenberg, who was very inconsistent on that O-line. As much as Leonard Taylor is very enticing as a defensive tackle, we already have Roquan Davis there. He's not bad at all. Zion Nelson is also tempting in terms of the tackle position. But I think they will be going with Cooper Beebe to the Miami Dolphins out of Kansas State. And the Ravens now, who didn't really go for cornerback as much as people thought they would. They got Zay Flowers in the first round. The Ravens defensive ends are looking pretty scarce right now. And Chop Robinson could possibly help them out with that. Cornerback, with the way that Cooper DeJean plays, I don't think he's going to be drafted by the Ravens just because they have Marlon Humphrey, who kind of fills the same role as he does. Safety they don't need in Cameron Kinchins. Don't think they'll be taking halfback. I definitely think they're going to go Chop Robinson. A great pass rusher again. A lot of good pass rushers in this draft class. Out of Penn State, the Chargers are now on the board. And the Chargers, I have the Chargers taking Cameron Kinchins at this position. As much as they have Derwin James, that other safety position is not filled in right now. It is not a good player in terms of the level of Derwin James. Cameron Kinchins can basically almost do the same. He is a dual threat, just needs to work on his tackling, and Derwin James kind of struggles with that on his own. But I think Cameron Kinchins can possibly get better over this year. Can play man, can play coverage, can play zone, can also be a run support safety. I think they fill out the back of the field and get Cameron Kinchins right next to Derwin James Jr. out of Miami. And now the Cowboys, a team that did not take cornerback. And I think Cooper DeJean continues to fall. Javon Bullard out of Georgia. 5'11", has a 4.540 right now. It's very quick and can really defend his zone in terms of where he's put on the field. And he can just be able to beat the tackle off the edge to get to the quarterback in the backfield. And I think that's really what the Cowboys need. They have Stephon Gilmore. They have Trayvon Diggs. Cornerback was not a position of priority for them this season. Not sure why, but I understand that they got Stephon Gilmore, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that you still need some cornerbacks back there. You're not sure if Stephon Gilmore is even going to be that great, and you just relied all of the draft on Stephon Gilmore being good. So I think Javon Bullard is going to be the solution to the Cowboys' needs right now. Out of Georgia, a lot of Georgia defensive players were picked this past season by the Eagles, as much as you guys have probably seen the memes going around about it, the Philadelphia Bulldogs. But now the Packers are back on the board because of a Jets trade that they had. The second round pick that turns into a first round pick if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of his snaps. They get a first round pick from the Jets, and I don't think halfback is a position for them. I don't think they're going to go QB either. And this is where I have Leonard Taylor going to the Packers. Slatton is not really doing what he needs to do as nose tackle of the Packers. And Leonard Taylor can fill in that position very well with his size, his length. If he ends up getting more strength throughout the season with the Miami Hurricanes, and even better. He has an explosive first step to shoot through the gaps. I think the Packers would love to have that type of player. They did get Lucas Van Ness this last season. They got a tackle at the beginning of the draft to help the offensive side, but I think this is where they take Leonard Taylor. As much as they probably need a safety, I don't think they're going to be reaching for that necessarily, and Leonard Taylor can really help them on the defensive side. Cornerback is also not that much of a position of need for them. They have Rasul Douglas, Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, all very solid cornerbacks for them. And the Lions at the 26th pick had a very questionable draft this season with Jahmyr Gibbs going at 12. As much as he was highly regarded by a lot of franchises, I don't know if he would have gone to 12. I don't even know if he would have gone in the first round if the Lions didn't take him. But cornerback is here, and Cooper DeJean could fill in a role that they need in terms of a slot cornerback. Yeah, I think you did get a good addition in the offseason with Cameron Sutton, but Cooper DeJean has already fallen this far. He's almost basically great at everything except for man. So you would want him to be in zone, in coverage, maybe even run support because he can tackle. I think he'll be a great addition for the Detroit Lions at the cornerback position. Still is a need for them. Yeah, I think they go with Cooper DeJean. He has fallen already too far, possibly. And the Jaguars at the 27th pick, they have Travis Etienne, so Blake Corum is not necessarily a position that they're going to be going with. This is really where I have Denzel Burke going out of Ohio State. More of a man cornerback. They do have Tyson Campbell and some solid cornerbacks. But at this position, there's really nothing else that they could go with necessarily. QB, Trevor Lawrence. Halfback, Travis Etienne. I think the safeties can hold it down at least until the second round in terms of what they end up picking. But Denzel Burke is right here for the taking. Kalen Bullock could be a possibility. Their safeties do need help, but that's something that you can probably handle in free agency, even cornerback. But at this position, I do have him taking Denzel Burke, more of a man corner. And the Bills are on the clock. And I'm going to have the Bills taking Kalen Bullock out of USC. 6'3", 180 pounds. Got 5 interceptions last year. Can really play coverage well. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are only getting older. They're at 32 right now. They could possibly regress at any point. You get somebody in Kalen Bullock that can play man and zone. Can't really miss out on that if you're at the 28th pick and he's projected basically to go 2 picks later than you to the San Francisco 49ers, who need a safety as well. But Kalen Bullock will be going to Buffalo to add to that defense that has been good but kind of regressed a little bit last season. But the Eagles back on the clock after having an extraordinary draft this past season. Maybe they learned from their mistake of not taking Bijan. I mean, they never had a chance to take Bijan since Atlanta took him at the 8th pick. They don't need a quarterback. They don't need a wide receiver. Defensive interior, they just drafted Jalen Carter. They're not going to need a defensive interior for years to come with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter there. Zion Nelson could be a situation just because their tackles are only getting older, and Lane Johnson. You have Landon Dickerson at guard. I would go with Blake Corum. That's possibly what they're going to go with, but I think the best case scenario for them is Zion Nelson. And I completely forgot that they just traded for DeAndre Swift, so Zion Nelson would probably be who they go after in terms of the 29th pick, as much as he doesn't always have that killer instinct. He's 6'5", more prioritized as being a pass blocker. He's not as good in the running game, but I think with the Philadelphia Eagles offense, he can learn and he can definitely adjust to being a good run blocker and then still keep the pass blocking in his arsenal. I'm going to have the Eagles going with Zion Nelson. I am going to have him going with Zion Nelson as to prepare for the future. You can't have too much depth at the tackle position or offensive line in general. Injuries on the offensive line happen in a snap of the finger, and it can happen just by them getting backed up and then falling on the QB if he ends up getting sacked by another man. It's a bunch of freak accidents, basically, and Zion Nelson is going to be going to the Eagles to basically learn under what they have right now. And as much as there are positions here that they could take, cornerback Malachi Moore is really the top one that I think they would probably take, but Blake Fisher is a great tackle, more of a pass blocker, but he is not far behind with being a run blocker as well. He can learn from Trent Williams, 6'6", out of Notre Dame. There is wide receiver, this defensive interior. They just signed Javon Hargrave for 3 years. They have Eric Armstead. Cornerback might be the reality of what they go with, but Blake Fisher is probably the best case scenario so that they can keep that offensive line strong. They have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. You're not sure who's going to be your quarterback in terms of Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. We saw that Trey Lance didn't move. DeAndre Hopkins didn't move, which was surprising in terms of the draft day. But yeah, I'm going to have Blake Fisher going to the 49ers. A great pass blocker, can learn to run block a little better, but It's not like he's bad at it. And the Bengals at the 31st pick, who possibly need to take a running back with Joe Mixon's situation, depending on how he does this season and his contract situation as well. Yeah, I think here's where the Bengals are going to try to get the running back of the future for their team. Blake Corum has been fantastic at Michigan, and he could get even better and possibly become the Bijan Robinson of this class in terms of just jumping up the ranks. But I don't see much teams that would really take a risk on a running back at this point. But Joe Mixon's contract is about to end. I don't think they're going to want to re-sign him for longer. He could still be good afterwards, but his legal troubles, his injury situations, Blake Corum could just fill in that role and basically replace Joe Mixon at that point. The only thing about Blake Corum is his size. He has a 4.38 speed, though. Can really run the ball. Can't really block for the quarterback, though, if need be. You're not going to have him in the backfield blocking. Undersized for that. I'm going to have Blake Corum going to Bengals nonetheless. And the Chiefs at 32. And I think they go with defense again at the end of this draft. They did take Felix at the end of last draft. But Tyler Davis is a great run stopper. Don't need wide receiver. You have Sky Moore, you have Kadarius Toney, you have MVS, you have Rashee Rice that you just drafted. I don't think they're going to be wanting to take Adonai Mitchell. I think they'll still go with defense. Yeah, I can't imagine they go wide receiver at this point. I think they'll definitely take a defensive interior with Tyler Davis, putting him alongside Chris Jones. They're not going to be taking Bo Nix. Yeah, I would like that pick for them for sure. They're already set at the cornerback position, so Malachi Moore is not going to be going to the Chiefs. And yeah, Tyler Davis going to the Kansas City Chiefs as a run support or run stopper. And I do not mind that draft at all. Possibly, this number one pick could be filled in by anybody. At this point, if it's the Cardinals, they're most likely going to be trading out of it like the Bears did. They could possibly get a haul from the Falcons. Maybe if Kyle Pitts has another bad season, they put Kyle Pitts in that trade, and then the Cardinals can actually utilize him. And then they're also able to get Marvin Harrison for Kyler Murray. I think that offense would be insane because I think Kyle Pitts is just being misused. He can't block. I don't know why they have him blocking at times. He's not made for that. He is a vertical threat. He's going to run the routes. Unless you put some weight on him, I don't think he should be blocking at all for the offense. But overall, Drake May going to the Bucs should be a great pick for them. Joe Alt to the Colts, another great tackle. I think just overall, this is a pretty good draft for almost everybody. I don't think as of right now there's going to be much of draft bust, of course, because we haven't even gone through the college season. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think, is going to be great. I think he could possibly even jump up the ranks in terms of the draft because cornerback is a valued position. Jared Verse, hopefully he does well at Florida State. He seems like he is going to be a top 5 prospect. But if you did enjoy that, please go down there, like and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this way too early mock draft. If you think somebody should be picked higher, somebody should be picked lower in terms of draft need, the position value, and things of that nature. But again, if you did enjoy, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.